Most people invest for themselves. The wealthy invest for people who haven't been born yet. Most people invest for themselves. They're thinking about retirement, maybe a vacation home, maybe finally paying off the mortgage. That's fine. But it's not wealth. Real wealth, the kind that changes a family's trajectory for generations. That's a completely different game. And it starts with a completely different question. The question isn't, what will make me money this year? The question is, what will still be worth something in 20, 30, 50 years from now? What has survived wars, collapsed governments, and the rise and fall of entire civilizations? Because if something has held its value through all of that, there's a very good chance it'll hold its value through whatever comes next. Today, we're going to look at the 5 assets that have done exactly that. These aren't trends. These aren't speculative bets. These are the building blocks that serious, long-term wealth is built on. The kind you pass down, not the kind you spend. Let's start with the most obvious one, and yet the one most people still underestimate. Real estate. Think about what real estate actually is. It's not a stock ticker. It's not a number on a screen. It's physical space. And people will always need physical space. They need somewhere to live, somewhere to work, somewhere to sleep. That need doesn't go away when the economy contracts. It doesn't disappear when interest rates spike. The demand for housing is one of the most durable forces in human history. What makes real estate uniquely powerful is that it serves 2 functions at once. It's a place to live and an appreciating asset. Most investments only pay you when you sell. Real estate can pay you while you hold it, through rent, through equity, through the simple act of having something other people need. And here's the historical proof. If you bought a median single-family home in the United States in the early 2000s, you paid around $165,000. That same home today is worth roughly $420,000. That's not just inflation. That's genuine, compounding appreciation. And you also had a roof over your head, or a tenant paying your mortgage the entire time. Even in downturns, 2008, 2020, real estate prices have pulled back and then recovered. Every single time. Because you can't manufacture more land in the places people actually want to live. You can renovate it, improve it, reposition it. You have control over this asset in a way you simply don't have with stocks or bonds. That control is what makes real estate not just a store of value, but an engine of it. Which brings us directly to asset number 2. And this one goes even deeper than real estate. We're talking about land itself. Land is the one truly finite resource on this planet. Governments can print more money. Companies can issue more shares. New technologies can create entirely new asset classes overnight. But nobody, no government, no corporation, no technology can make more land. There is exactly as much land today as there was 1,000 years ago. Meanwhile, the number of people competing for that land keeps growing. More people moving into cities, more demand for coastal areas, more need for farmland, commercial plots, and development zones. The math is brutally simple. Fixed supply, rising demand. Prices go in one direction over time. What separates land from real estate is that land requires almost nothing from you. A house needs maintenance, renovations, upkeep. Land just sits there and appreciates. You don't have to do a single thing with it to hold its value. And if a government decides to develop the area around your land, you didn't lift a finger, and your asset just doubled. Some of the most powerful land investments aren't glamorous. Farmland on the outskirts of a growing city. Raw acreage in a corridor that's being developed. Coastal lots that seem remote today, but won't be in 20 years. The investors who bought these positions decades ago didn't need to be visionaries. They just needed patience. And they needed to understand that land doesn't wear out. It doesn't go bankrupt. It doesn't get disrupted by a better app. It just exists, and scarcity does the rest. Even as the value of paper currency slowly erodes over time, land holds firm. Historically, land values have outpaced inflation, which means every year you hold it, you're not just preserving wealth, you're growing it. That's a rare combination. Now here's where it gets interesting. Asset number 3 is a category most people have never seriously considered as a wealth-building tool. And yet the numbers tell a story that's hard to ignore. We're talking about alternative collectibles, luxury watches, rare trading cards, fine art, vintage wine, limited edition sneakers. Things that most people think of as hobbies. Things that serious investors are quietly building fortunes around. Here's the core insight. The best collectibles don't just hold their value, they appreciate because the supply is permanently fixed and the demand keeps growing. There will never be another first edition Charizard in mint condition added to the world. Rolex doesn't flood the market with its most sought-after references. It deliberately constrains supply. A 1961 Chateau Petrus isn't getting any younger, and the number of bottles left in the world only ever goes down. When supply is frozen and cultural demand keeps building, price appreciation is almost inevitable. Let's talk numbers, because this is where the skeptics usually go quiet. A PSA 10 graded Charizard from the original 1999 Pokemon base set sold for $420,000 in 2022. In 1999, those packs cost a few dollars at a toy store. A stainless steel Rolex Daytona, the kind that was sitting unsold in display cases in the 1980s, now commands anywhere from $30,000 to over $100,000 on the secondary market, depending on the reference. Vintage Bordeaux from celebrated years has returned over 300% in some portfolios over the past 2 decades. These aren't flukes. This is a pattern. And unlike some traditional investments, collectibles carry a lifestyle element that makes them genuinely enjoyable to hold. You can wear the watch, you can display the card, you can drink the wine, though if you're smart, you won't. That dual nature, where the asset also brings personal enjoyment while it appreciates, is something stocks and bonds simply can't offer. The key, and this is critical, is condition and authenticity. A graded, authenticated card in a PSA 10 case is worth exponentially more than the same card pulled from a binder. A Rolex with full original documentation, and box commands a premium over one without. The collectibles that build generational wealth are the ones that have been protected, verified, and preserved. That's not complicated. It just requires care and intention. What makes this category particularly exciting right now is that the infrastructure around it has matured. Grading services, authentication platforms, secondary markets with genuine liquidity, fractional investment platforms for art and other high-end collectibles. The barriers that used to keep serious collectors out of this world have come down significantly. And for those building a diversified generational portfolio, alternative collectibles are no longer a niche. They're a legitimate asset class. Asset number 4, shares in the dominant companies of the modern world. Now, stocks get a complicated reputation when we're talking about generational wealth, and for good reason. Most companies don't last. Most stocks will underperform. Betting on a random stock is genuinely risky. But we're not talking about random stocks. We're talking about the companies that are so deeply embedded in daily life that removing them would require rebuilding civilization from scratch. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. These aren't just tech companies. They're infrastructure. The operating systems people use. The searches they run. The cloud computing that powers nearly every business on Earth. The logistics networks that move goods around the globe. People don't stop using iPhones because the economy slows. Businesses don't cancel their cloud subscriptions during a recession. These companies provide things that are now as essential as electricity or running water. And when economic downturns hit, these companies don't panic. They expand. They buy competitors at discounted prices. They invest in R&D when smaller rivals are cutting costs. Microsoft went from selling operating systems to becoming one of the most powerful cloud computing companies on Earth. Google went from a search engine to leading in artificial intelligence, digital advertising, and cloud infrastructure. These companies don't just survive change, they lead it. And that's what makes them durable. The numbers make the case plainly. A single share of Amazon in 1997 cost about $1.50. Today, it trades near 200. Apple stock was worth less than $1 per share in 2000. Today, it's over $200. If your grandparents had put $10,000 into either of those companies and held on, that money would have grown into something that changes your family's trajectory entirely. That's the compounding engine of blue chip equity, and it's one of the most powerful forces in modern wealth creation. And that brings us to the fifth and final asset, the oldest one on the list: precious metals, gold and silver. Here's the thing about gold and silver: empires have collapsed, currencies have been inflated into worthlessness, financial systems have been rebuilt from the ground up. And through all of it, every war, every revolution, every economic catastrophe, gold and silver have never gone to zero. Not once in recorded human history. Why? Because they don't depend on anyone. Stocks depend on corporate earnings. Real estate depends on financing and market demand. Cash depends on a government choosing to maintain its value. Gold depends on nothing. It just exists. It doesn't decay. It doesn't require quarterly earnings reports. It doesn't need infrastructure to retain its worth. It is what it is. And what it is has been considered valuable by every civilization that has ever held it. When markets get chaotic, when geopolitical tensions spike, when inflation starts eroding the value of paper currency, investors move to gold. Central banks around the world, including the United States, China, and Germany, hold massive gold reserves precisely because it functions as the ultimate hedge. If everything else fails, gold still has value. That's a feature no other asset class can fully replicate. Silver plays a similar role, with the added dimension of industrial demand. Solar panels, electronics, medical equipment. Silver isn't just a monetary metal anymore. It's a material that modern technology depends on, and supply can't keep pace with the pace of technological development. That creates a long-term demand story on top of its already established role as a store of value. These metals aren't going to make you rich overnight. That's not the point. The point is that in a diversified generational portfolio, they're the anchor. They're the thing that holds its value when everything else is in free fall. And over decades, they've reliably outpaced inflation, which means they're not just preserving wealth, they're quietly growing it. So let's step back and look at what all five of these assets share: real estate, land, alternative collectibles, shares in dominant companies, precious metals. Every single one of them has survived economic cycles that destroyed other forms of wealth. Every single one of them benefits from scarcity, either because more can't be made, or because demand keeps outpacing supply, or both. And every single one of them has decades, in some cases centuries, of evidence showing it can hold and grow value across generations. The wealthy don't just think about making money. They think about keeping it, about building systems around it, about ensuring that the decisions they make today are still paying off when their grandchildren are making decisions of their own. That's a different mentality. And it requires a different kind of asset. Getting rich is only half the equation. The half most people forget is what comes after. If you want to build something that lasts beyond your own lifetime, start here. These are the foundations that generational wealth has been built on for centuries, and nothing on the horizon suggests that's about to change.